Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. I'm looking at a book right now that's a journey of love, dreams, and parenthood. It's written by Steph Marquardt, and it's titled Lofty in Skies, Happy Space and Place. And Steph is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're going to talk all about it. Steph, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, my goodness. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Steph, can you tell me all about Lofty in Skies, Happy Space and Place? What are readers in store for?
They are in store for an emotional journey. Lofty and Sky are giraffes. They're a husband and wife giraffe couple that start a family, and they are looking around and they can see other giraffe families being able to have children, and so they are wondering what in the world they need to do to start a family of their own. Not everybody's journey is the same, and theirs is a most difficult one. So when readers read this book, they are going to see through the illustrations, they're going to feel through the text what Lofty and Sky are experiencing. And it's some highs, it's some lows with a happy ending. And that's not always the case, but this particular story does have a happy ending. It's really just been a beautiful experience.
What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this, Steph?
Well, readers could be people like me, people like me sitting down with their kids. And really, that's kind of the reason why I wrote this book in the first place was, oh my goodness, my kid's dad and I had a really rough go trying to have children ourselves. I wanted a way to be able to sit down and really explain to my kids not just the facts, but the feelings that went along with what their dad and I went through. And, our particular journey was doctor visits, years and years of doctor visits, trying to figure out what was quote unquote wrong. But when, we finally got the help that we needed, it was still so hard, still so hard to wait. When our first baby was born, our daughter, who's now almost 11, it's hard to believe, when she was born, it was the best pinch me moment of everything that we went through, the heartaches, the tears, the doctor's visits, the pokes, the ultrasounds, all the things that we had to do, it made it all worth it. So my desire was not only to be able to sit down with my own kids and tell them about the journey that it took for us to have them, but so others like me can do the same thing. And even if a kid themselves, we're talking children, if they're of reading age, all the way up to 11 or 12, could pick up this book and look at the pictures and read the text and go, wow. My hope is that it will stir up some emotions and most of all, compassion. Because again, not all of us have it's not the same journey from A to B sometimes. And so, my hope and my heart behind this is to connect with the readers. If mom's sitting there reading to her 2-year-old and mom might choke up because she's like, oh, yeah, this is how it was for me, too. And, she can sit there and talk with her 2-year-old and her 2-year-old can say, why are you sad, mama? And mama can say, man, you're a miracle. And I can't wait to explain more to you as you get older, So I hope it's a tool that can help parents like me tell their story to their kids.
So do you have experience publishing, or is this your first go at it?
This is my first go. And wouldn't you know, when I submitted the draft to Covenant Books, I did have some high expectations, like, okay, it could happen, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe they'll say no. Maybe they'll say, okay, it's close, but we're not ready at this time. But they got back to me within a week and said, let's do this. And I tell you what, the word elated doesn't even describe how I felt, because really since I was a kid, I wanted to write books. Again, it's just total elation from start to finish, really.
What a wonderful book this is. Again, the title is Lofty in Sky's Happy Space and Place. It's written by Steph Marquardt and published by Covenant Books. It's available everywhere, really, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Steph, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It was really great talking with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was lovely talking to you as well.
I'm delighted to welcome back to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, author Reverend James Solomon. James, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me again.
My pleasure.
You have a new book out, Workbook to Deliverance from Demonic Covenant and Curses, Spiritual Warfare and Deliverance Manual. James, can you tell me what this is all about?
This came as a result of my first book, which was Deliverance from Demonic Covenants and Curses, which is a bestseller in Jewish theology, number one bestseller in Jewish theology right now. When I put those books together, the Lord ministered to me I should give the details, information that will help people more, because that book is major part of it has been my testimonies. But then I needed to have a teaching where people will learn more, and it could be used in colleges, in churches, in Bible schools. So that's why the workbook came in. I use the workbook to be something that people can really use in their Bible schools, in churches, and in teachings. So that's why I bring forth the workbook. It came because the other book was majorly my testimony, but this workbook has the detailed information about my testimony.
And I love how, with the workbook, you're making it interactive so that the readers can participate as well. James, can you remind us of what readers that you were speaking to here?
I think for my workbook, it's a general book because it addresses the general situation and circumstances of the people. But then it also answers most of the questions that Christians need to ask. For example, I talk about the belief, who we believe, about spiritual warfare, about deliverance. This workbook, we're able to break all these into pieces for everybody to be able to understand what is deliverance, what is spiritual warfare, can a Christian have demons? Some of these questions that people really need to know, I explain into details some of this information about this workbook. Workbook is detailed and it's for everyone. It could be for Christian, non-Christian, those who want to make some researches, who want to know more about God, want to know more about spiritual warfare. It's good for everyone.
Once you got started developing the workbook, James, was this a long process for you?
Yeah, like the other book, my first book was handwritten in 1987. And so, yes, but it's been long. But then the workbook came when people started demanding that they would need more information, more of the material they could use to lecture in Bible colleges and they could use in seminaries. So that's what gave back to the workbook. And that happened that's not longer than just about 5-6 years ago that I started developing the workbook, yes.
What would you say was the most challenging part of developing this workbook?
Yes, I had to do a lot of studies. It took me more time to study a lot of stuff because, I'm coming from African background, so I needed to understand what is the belief, what the cults, what are religions of other nations, which make me to be able to break down a lot of other religions, a lot of other cults, and things that has affected some other people from other nations that they don't know. So it took me time to make a lot of researches. And that was good because it helped me to know more. And it will help my reader as well.
And I'm looking at the book right now, and you have great covers to your book, James. Is there a lot of thought? Is that difficult to figure out what you want the covers to these to look like?
Yes, I felt if I need to do a reprint, I may work on the cover more. But I think try to explain what the workbook is for, and so it makes me to come up with a lot of ideas. And yes, the cover, I looked at it and I'm saying, okay, maybe if I have to redo, I may work on the cover. But the cover is not the issue at this time, but the content in the book. And so I'm grateful to God that the book is out. Finally, I'm blessing a lot of people. Many people have been calling because of that work.
I think readers are going to find this workbook extremely useful. Again, it's titled Workbook to Deliverance from Demonic Covenant and Curses, Spiritual Warfare and Deliverance Manual. This is written by Reverend James Solomon and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you find it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also right down the street at your local bookshop. James, it's been really wonderful talking with you again. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Me too. I appreciate you, sir.
The new book by author Melanie Krause explores how to deepen one's faith and develop a stronger bond with God. The book is titled Footprint from God, Deepening the Impression One Day at a Time. And Melanie is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. We get to talk all about this book. Melanie, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Melanie, can you tell me all about Footprint from God and what readers are going to find here?
Well, it's a 73 devotional. It starts with Genesis and it ends with Revelation. It has just a tidbit of every book in Scripture. It also it has a daily reflection and then takes you just a little bit with some food for thought.
Melanie, what readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Really, there's really no age limit. Just anyone who's looking to deepen their relationship with God. It's for the busy person. It's for those of us, especially who just have a few little moments of time. These reflections are short, but they leave you with much to ponder, really.
So, Melanie, how did this book come about? Where did you get the idea to write this?
Well, it started, honestly, and at the time I wasn't writing a book. A dear friend of mine who was losing her battle with ALS, it was her last days when I was sitting by her side, and I felt just the Lord put it on my heart to write. And in that moment, I didn't really know what that was going to look like. And so I did. I picked up my journal, I picked up a pencil, and I wrote about everything that I witnessed, everything that I was feeling. And as time went on, I don't know, it didn't feel quite right. And so I kind of set everything aside and took some time for myself. And it's really through art that I've always gotten my inspiration. I'm not one to write or journal to express myself. I usually sketch, I read scripture, and then I kind of go from there. And so after taking a break for, a few weeks, I felt led to just go back to scripture, and so I did. And when I did, these key words and phrases kind of popped out, and I kind of put pencil to paper. And when I made my way through scripture, by the end of doing that, I had this image of a footprint in front of me. And so I sat with that for a while. And the longer I sat with it, the more I felt the Lord say, Melanie, this is what you need to write about. And so I did. I started with Genesis, and I took the words that I put on in that piece of art, and we kind of went from there. And I did. I made my way through the Bible and have little nuggets of just knowledge that were brought to my heart through this process of sitting with God and art. So that's how it kind of came to be.
So once you got started on it, you're writing the book, you hand the manuscript off to Covenant, and you get that publishing done. Was this a long journey overall for you?
Oh, it was, honestly. It took me probably about 5 years, just because initially I wasn't writing a book. I was just writing what I felt and what I saw. And then as I made my way through towards the end, it was like, okay, this looks like a manuscript to me, And I did. I sat with that for quite a while because I'm not a writer. I really am not a writer, or I never expected to be. And I did. I sat with that, and I really kind of studied what was going to happen next. Was I going to get a literary agent? Was I going to self-publish? I really didn't know. And then somehow I stumbled across Covenant, and it just made sense. And we kind of hit the floor running from there.
So there's the writing of the book, you got the manuscript, handed off to Covenant, that publishing process starts. So, Melanie, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Probably the time it took. It's like once you finally decide to do something, you're just ready to watch it grow. And it was like every little edit, every little yes or no took weeks. And so it was just the time.
Oh, what a wonderful devotional this sounds like. I know that so many people are going to be blessed. Again, it's titled Footprint from God, Deepening the Impression One Day at a Time. It's written by Melanie Krause, published by Covenant Books, so you can find it literally everywhere, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Melanie, thank you so much again for talking with me tonight. It's been really wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
The book we're going to be talking about right now is a look at the history of the Christian religion and how it's been warped over the centuries to be used as a tool to control others. This is a book written by Harry Charles Jr., and it's titled The Hijacking of Christianity: Christianity Origin, the Church, Africa, the Jews, Slavery, and Race in America. Harry is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're going to talk all about this. Harry, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Harry, can you tell me all about the hijacking of Christianity and what readers are going to find here?
Well, let me tell you, the hijacking of Christianity is sort of like a whirlwind of exposing the secrets that have been hidden for centuries. It begins with the origin of Christianity, and then we give you the religious world of Christianity as a jigsaw puzzle with all of the hidden truths and pieces of the puzzle scattered all around the world in secret places. As me, myself, the writer, I'm trying to place you, the reader, as a participant. And as you read the book, you will be able to literally see the puzzle come together. We uncover who created Christianity, where the cross came from, who gave us all the holidays we currently celebrate, and who was Jesus Christ, and how was he invented, and what is his real name. We expose why his real name was hidden from the world for centuries. We reveal how and why the scriptures of the original Bible and characters were changed and why. This book provides proof through research, the Bible, DNA, geography, science, and the writings of different scholars. This book will show how deception, cover-ups, distortions, and the whitewashing of biblical characters, icons, and the Messiah, and God himself were changed.
Harry, was it primarily a Christian audience that you were writing for?
Not necessarily a Christian audience, but let me give you an example of the following people that really should read The Hijacking of Christianity. Of course, those who identify as Christian and Muslim, educators in secondary education on the college and university level, especially professors, and those who teach history and religion. It is also specifically geared to African Americans or blacks who are descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. This is a must-read book for African Americans. It is good and beneficial for all people who seek truth and want to know more knowledge and understand what's really going on to read the book. It pulls back the curtain of lies and deception and distortions and cover-ups that we've all been fed for centuries.
So how did this come about, Harry? Where'd you get the idea to get started on it?
It came about as an educator and teaching history in the secondary education, high school. Just had a lot of puzzling questions. Students kept asking me a lot of questions that most times, it was certain questions you didn't have answers for because it was so vague. And so after I retired and had the time to really settle back and put some research in, that's how the book came about. The inspiration for writing it came, as I said, after I was spending many years in secondary education as a social science teacher. And then, just finding a lack of information on African-American studies and African-American history. And the kids would ask me, hey, Mr. Charles, is slavery the only thing that African-Americans did? What happened before that? Or where did we come from, in Africa before? What did we do? What was our traditions and so forth? Those were some puzzling questions. I had to ponder those things and ask myself. And because actually the major publication that printed books for the high schools didn't have that information. We had Black History Month, was the month of February, the shortest month of the year. And that was the only time we were able to spend a little time on that subject, which meant it could have been a whole curriculum for a whole year. So that's what inspired me. I mean, just listening to these things and my concerns, and then mine being raised as a Christian in a Christian home and things like that. And there was a lot of correlation, but a lot of things just weren't coming together. And so that's what inspired me to do this.
Looking down the road, do you think you have more books in you? You thinking about maybe writing more?
Oh, this is just the beginning. I'm already into the second phase right now.
Definitely an important book. Again, it's titled The Hijacking of Christianity: Christianity Origin, the Church, Africa, the Jews, Slavery, and Race in America. This is written by Harry Charles Jr., and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing. So really, it's available anywhere. Go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Well, Harry, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been really great talking with you tonight.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I'd be happy to do it anytime.
Author Annell James has written a thought-provoking guide to effectively engaging upcoming generations. The title of the book is Engaging Millennials in Missions. Annell is sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're going to talk all about the book. Annell, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Annell, can you tell me all about engaging millennials in missions? What are readers going to find here?
Well, what they're going to find is hopefully an answer to the question of how to get millennials back in the church and get them back with a want to be able to go out and minister to people. When Jesus left, he left the Great Commission, and he wanted us, the believers, to let everyone know about the gospel of Jesus Christ and his purpose for coming the first time. And we're supposed to go out and spread the word to everyone throughout the world. But it seemed like some of the church was starting to fall away, and that would be the millennials. There were less and less children coming to church, and since we know children cannot drive themselves, it kind of fell back on the parents who are millennials. And so I began to do some research on millennials and their mindset and things like that to figure out where the breakdown was, what was keeping them from coming to church. Why did they stop going out and doing missions? That was the need that I saw to bring them back into the church.
Who are you writing this for, Annell? What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this?
I wanted to write it for anyone that has a church, anyone that is involved in spreading the gospel. And there are so many people that have experienced the fact that young people are falling away. And since this is the future of the church, if you don't have any young people, then you don't have a future for the church. And so we need to bring them back in. And a lot of people are experiencing this. Once they go to college, that's kind of the last time you see them. So, you want to give them or entice them, and that's what's in the book, how to get them back into the church and back into being interested in doing the work of the Lord.
Annell, is this your first book, or are you experienced in this?
No, this is the first time. I've always desired to write a book, but I read something a while back that said that you should write about the things that you know. You should not write about, topics you don't know anything about. And I was just finishing up my doctorate at Liberty University. I majored in theology and biblical studies was my minor. And over the process of getting my doctorate, I gained a lot of information about missions and about the gospel. And I wanted to share that, what I had learned, what I knew, to share that with others, that might help them too, or give them at least some type of idea on how they could bring the young people back.
So once you sat down and got started on this, how long of a journey was this for you? And now clear up through when it was published.
Probably about almost 3 years.
And once you handed that manuscript off to the publisher, to Christian Faith, and you started that publishing process, what did you find the most challenging part of that for you?
I think the most challenging was writing and rewriting and getting the final draft ready to go to them. I think that was it. And then after that, it was trying to come up with a thought-provoking cover, because I feel like a lot of people will look at books and depending on they may not open it, but if they see something on the outside, it possibly could strike a nerve, something to prompt them or make them want to see what's inside.
So looking ahead, what are the chances that we might see some more books from you here in the future?
I've been kicking around an idea for one, and it's a little bit different, but it's going to actually involve some things from the Old Testament. We'll see where that goes.
Well, this is definitely a book that's needed out there. Again, it's titled Engaging Millennials in Missions. It's written by Annell James, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available everywhere that you would normally go for books, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also right down the street at your local bookshop. Annell, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thank you again for coming on with me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
The new book, written by author Brandon Butler, encourages parents to cherish every single moment that they spend with their babies. The book's titled Baby Bed, and we're going to talk all about it. Brandon, the author, is right here with me. Brandon, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I really appreciate you joining me tonight.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and carving a little time out of your day for me.
Absolutely. Brandon, can you tell me about Baby Bed and what readers are going to find?
Yeah, so it's basically just a baby story that I would hope that parents will fall in love with and read to their babies when they're little bitty and before they get too old.
And what inspired this story? How'd you get the idea for it, Brandon?
So my wife and I, we have two kids of our own. Hadley is 7 and Bo is 3 now, but when Bo was little bitty and Hadley was out of the baby bed, we had moved a few times and we were getting kind of caught up in all of our different moves and jobs and stuff like that. And basically, I just kind of sat down and said, man, we're going to be short on time with these kids if we don't just stop and be intentional with our time with them. And kind of had some words on my mind and wrote them down on a piece of paper and gave it to my wife. And she loved it. And I really wrote it. And then probably 2 years later, decided to put some pictures with it and get it out there for maybe other parents to read.
Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, I haven't. And really, honestly, I'm 37 years old, and I probably didn't read a full book all the way through until I was 32. So
wow.
It's kind of way out of my wheelhouse.
So once you decided to get serious on it and start writing it, putting your pictures to it, was it a long process then, getting it all through publishing and everything?
It was longer than what I would thought it would be. But looking back, I felt like we were busy the whole time. We would go through page by page. And once they started kind of drawing the pictures out and sending me proofs of them, and we would go through and make small changes, it felt like we were busy the entire time and looked down and it's 6 to 9 months later and we have a finished product. So it was longer than I thought, but it didn't seem that long at all.
And after all that time, that hard work you put into it, you get that first copy and you're finally holding it in your hands. You're looking at Baby Bed. What was that like, Brandon?
Man, I was so proud, and the first thing I wanted to do was sit down and read it to my kids and, with my wife. And then the funny thing is after I read it to them, they just wanted to move on to the next book. It's very special to me. My wife and I, we just, every now and then we'll just sit down and look at it. I've got a few copies that I carry around with me to hand out just in case I see somebody and I'm like, hey, I wrote this. I'd like for you to have it. And like I said, it's just a quick reminder on those days when your 3-year-old is crying and screaming because his banana broke in half and he wants another one that, hey, he's probably going to be able to peel his own banana here before too long,
Now, the illustrations are so important in books like this. So was it a challenging process to get the illustrations just right to kind of what you were seeing in your head all along?
We would go back and forth and they would kind of draw what their interpretation of it was. And then I would say, here, I kind of had this, and we would kind of meet in the middle and then small tweaks here and there. And it kind of turned into, most of the time, it wasn't exactly what I'd pictured at first in my mind. But then once we all talked it out, it kind of ended up being exactly what it needed to be.
And now that you're officially a published author, Brandon, what's the most rewarding aspect to you of that?
Locally here, we've kind of gotten the word out, and we have a ton of people around us that are also getting the word out. And when somebody just comes up and they ask me to sign their book, it's kind of weird. It's different. I kind of look down and don't even know what to say, except, yeah, sure, I'll sign it. It's a different type of feeling, that's for sure.
And it sounded like this might have been some easy writing for you. Did you ever get stuck for ideas? Do you ever get writer's block, anything like that along the way?
I wouldn't call it writer's block. I wouldn't even call myself a writer. If I think of something, I'll write a couple of things down. And then, really with these words here, I had an idea in my head and I sat down and I just started writing and it all came out. And really, it did not take me that long to write it. And so I would imagine that the few ideas that I have in my head for the next one, when the time comes and it hits me just right, I'll probably sit down and take a little time and write it down. And maybe at that point, I'll let you know if I get the old writer's block.
Well, sounds like families and young ones are really going to be into this. Again, the book is titled Baby Bed. It's written by Brandon Butler, published by Covenant Books, and available everywhere that you'd normally go to get your books, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Brandon, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been really great talking with you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Once again, I really appreciate you taking a couple minutes and chatting with me.
There's an inspirational journey of redemption in the new book by Julie Fletcher. The book's titled Freedom for the Broken. And Julie is right here with me now, and we get to talk all about this book. Julie, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm curious about Freedom for the Broken, Julie. What are readers going to find here?
My goal is for them to see how decisions that they made, specifically abortion, and the guilt that you carry with that, you can get freedom from that when you turn to Jesus. And I want to give them hope and a renewed sense of themselves, not the unworthiness that you carry with it. And it's a taboo topic that you can't talk to anybody about, and it needs to be talked about. I had a drug addiction trying to stop the pain inside me, and I feel that there are other people out there just like me who are trying to navigate life carrying that kind of guilt and shame. There's freedom from that through Jesus.
Julie, would you say then primarily this book was written for those who have gone through abortions?
Yes, sir. It's got a lot of topics. If you grew up without a father, that has a significant impact on the life of a child when they don't have a father. I want them to know that Jesus wants to be their father, and he will if they just ask him.
Julie, how did this book come about? What gave you the idea to write this?
Well, I've documented my life in notebooks, specifically what I call the drug years. I always say I would emotionally vomit on the page. I have carried those books around since 1999. I've documented over the years. And actually, about a year and a half ago, I lost my job that I had tutored nursing students, and I lost my job. And I was asking God, what am I supposed to do now? And he distinctly said, kingdom business is your priority. And I knew what he was talking about. I knew that I had to put my testimony in print. And so I went through those notebooks. I had 22 of them. There was fear about going through those notebooks. But what I found was that it was like the Holy Spirit was on my shoulder saying, you see what those people said? Look now. Look how far you've come. They don't feel that way about you anymore. There was healing through it. It was just absolutely amazing.
Have you ever published before, or are you new to all this?
Never. This is my first book. It's been a learning process. It's not long. I know that people like me don't like to read, a novel. And I just wanted it to be to the point and powerful and to offer them some hope. Life without hope makes suicide look like freedom.
So once you wrote this, you got your manuscript sent off to Christian Faith Publishing. You started that publishing process. And Julie, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
The time of it. I didn't realize, it was going to be such a lengthy process. I mean, I had nothing to pull from as far as wisdom was to go. I've learned so much through this process. I plan to write another book, and I'll do it in a more organized fashion than I did this. But they were wonderful helping me and, just walking through the whole process.
When you finally got your first copy in and you were holding this in your hands, Julie, what kind of a moment was that like for you?
I mean, people always say it was surreal, but it was a surreal moment, and I just prayed that God would use it to give him glory. I let my mom read it. She said she was kind of worried that people were going to think bad of me. And I told her, if people think bad of me, then that's not who I wrote the book for. I wrote the book for the people who were probably, honestly, on the receiving end of that attitude and trying to pretend like they're okay when they're not. I just want people to know that there's freedom from it. There's hope. There's a brand new life, and God can use it to help other people.
Again, the title is Freedom for the Broken. It's written by Julie Fletcher, published by Christian Faith Publishing. So find it at places like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also right down the street at your local bookshop. Julie, it's been really great talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show with me.
Thank you again so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
The book we're going to be talking about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is the true story of the author's wrongful conviction for his wife's murder. The name of the book is From Patriotism to Prison, The Other Side of Justice. It's written by Jimmy Ed.S, and Jimmy is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Jimmy, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad to learn all about From Patriotism to Prison, Jimmy. So can you tell me all about what you've written here?
Well, it's, like I said, it's a book that I wrote about my experience. I spent 22 years in prison. I was tried twice for first-degree murder and found guilty and was scheduled for a third trial. I should say that according to what some say in the state of Florida, I am told that I'm the only person in the state of Florida who has ever had their conviction overturned twice. I was charged with the first-degree murder 7 years after the fact that my wife was murdered. And of all things, I was charged even though the sheriff department in Okaloosa County and FDLE had witnesses that saw people leaving my home the day of the crime. I was charged even though I have at least 17 different comments about the evidence that was found in my home. Yet, whenever they came up for trial 7 years later, they said they didn't have any evidence. So I have said, and I will continue to say, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement was corrupt from the very people who kept the evidence to the individuals that was out investigating the evidence. The state's attorney in District 1 in Pensacola refused to prosecute me. Curtis Golden told the governor to his face that there was no evidence against me and that he refused to prosecute. Yet the Governor Lawton Childs, because of doing favors for two of his people that gave him the boots that he walked across the state of Florida when he first came into politics, because of their request, he kept appointing special prosecutors to prosecute me.
Jimmy, what sort of a reading audience did you have in mind for this? Who are you writing this book for?
I was writing this book for Northwest Florida. I just wanted people to realize and know. Whenever I was teaching school there, it seemed like there was a 50-50 divide between the people. Half of them felt like that I was guilty and half of them felt like that I was innocent. But I just wanted people to know what the state of Florida has done to me. Every governor from Lawton Childs on has had to appoint special prosecutors in my case. And when the governors appoint special prosecutors, believe me, it's almost impossible to oppose them because they have the power of the governor behind them.
So, Jimmy, once you got started on this book, how long of a process was this for you, the writing of it and the publishing and everything?
I wrote the book 3 times. I rewrote it a couple of times. I'm 79 years old, and it was difficult for me. I had some information, but most all of the information was destroyed. Even whenever I got out of the jail, they kept me 3 years. Wow. Even though this last time, even though my conviction had been overturned, they kept me 3 years in the Okaloosa County jail. And the day whenever I got out, I still did not have a trial date, even though I had asked for a speedy trial. I would like to say that I thank God that the Exoneration Project of Chicago, Carl Leonard, Joshua Tepfer, and Tara Thompson, they supported me. The Innocent Project of Florida, Zeth Miller, and Krista Ann Dolan, they supported me. And if it had not been for them, I would not be out of prison.
Well, this is definitely a story that needs told, and I think readers are going to be into it. Again, this book is titled From Patriotism to Prison, The Other Side of Justice. It's written by Jimmy Ed.S, published by Newman Springs Publishing, and it's available everywhere, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Jimmy, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me about this story. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Author Alisha Moss has written a story that celebrates the magic of nature and childhood imagination. The book is titled Chasing Little Stars, and Alisha is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're going to talk all about it. Alisha, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your being here. Can you tell me all about Chasing Little Stars, Alisha? What can readers find here?
So it's kind of just a hopeful little book touching on what it's like to be a kid and the imagination and joy of just doing something as simple as spending time with your friends. I wanted to just give readers something that they could pass down to their kids and would touch on any age.
So you would say that this is for all readers then? You didn't have a specific group in mind for it?
Yeah, I think it kind of evolved from a poem into a children's story. And yeah, I just feel like anybody could really find something that they appreciate from it.
So how did this come about, Alisha? How'd you get the idea to start this?
It actually was a poem and short story that I wrote a long time ago. And I just sort of kept tweaking it over and over and was finally inspired to turn it into a children's book after having my kids a couple of years ago. And I really wanted to start putting out some literature for them and stuff that I would be proud to read to them and that they would be proud of seeing their mom's name on that. And so I really wanted to do something to also inspire my kids to pursue their dreams.
So are you new to this whole publishing thing, or have you done this kind of thing before?
No, yeah, this is my very first book that I've ever gotten published. I've been writing for years, but this is sort of my first crack at it, and I'm really excited.
And once you sat down and got serious on it, how long of a journey was this for you from beginning to end, clear up until it was published?
It's been almost a full year of just getting it written and edited and working with the illustrator and making sure that it feels like it's its best version.
Yeah, those illustrations are super important, especially in books like this. So what kind of a process was that like for you, Alisha? Was that easy for you to get those illustrations lined up for kind of what you were seeing in your head?
A little bit. It was kind of fun, actually, to be able to dive into working with an illustrator. As an artist myself, I could kind of see what I wanted in my head. And so they give you this really fun questionnaire, and you kind of answer a lot of questions and get as detailed as possible. So it was kind of an interesting process and really fun to work with the illustration department and sort of describe what I wanted and how I see the book and different parts, and being able to see kind of how they take that and what they end up being able to do with it. So it was really a fun process.
So what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
I think, honestly, being able to give as much detail as possible for the illustrations, that was probably the most challenging part of it. Sometimes being able to describe what you see in your head, even though you've written a story down on paper, sometimes getting even more detailed and diving even a little further to be able to get that image that's in your head as you're writing on paper. That part I feel like is the most challenging, but it's also the most rewarding when it comes out and when you finally get to see those images.
You get the first copy and it finally arrives. It's a real thing. What was going through your head? What were you feeling whenever you were holding that the first time?
Oh, man, I was so proud of myself for taking the chance and taking a risk on something, because you never know, especially as an author, you never know if a publisher is going to be into your book or if they're going to like it or kind of get what you're trying to put out there. And also just feeling like I had something that I could show people and be proud of. And my first thing that I did was I couldn't wait to show my daughters and read it to them. And so it was really fun. It was a good experience. And I just felt really proud of myself for taking that chance.
Is there anything you might have picked up along the way, Alisha, that you could throw out there as some advice for the aspiring authors who are listening?
Yeah, take a chance. Don't sit there and be afraid to just, even if you're not sure the book is good enough, even if you're not sure you're good enough, you have to take a chance. It is always going to pay out. Even if you get 1,000 no's and people are constantly giving you, hey, this is not quite ready yet, you're still going to learn something, but you have to take a chance. You have to take the risk and allow people to read your work and put yourself out there.
Some great advice. Well, I really think the young readers, and all readers, in fact, will love this book. Again, the title is Chasing Little Stars. It's written by Alisha Moss and published by Covenant Books. So you can find it places like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Alisha, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Author Paul Scifres has written a diverse collection of engaging short stories. The name of the book is Deciphered. Paul is right here with me now, and we're going to find out all about this. Paul, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
Good afternoon, Corey. Glad to be here with you. Thank you for the invite and having me on.
You're very welcome. Paul, can you tell me all about Deciphered? What are readers going to find when they open this one up?
The interesting and fun thing about this book is that you'll find a little bit of everything, from humor, some satirical, political comments, some information on just a little bit different view of how things work. And then the last section is kind of reminiscing memories of growing up, some of them nostalgic, some of them funny. The book is divided into 3 sections. The first one leans more towards the humorous side of things. Second section deals with editorial comment, a little bit of political, but mostly just different view of how things might work. For example, gift cards. Kind of an interesting slant on gift cards and poking a little fun at advertising here and there. And so it was a fun thing to do for me. I really enjoyed doing it and putting it together.
What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this, Paul?
The stories are deliberately written. Target audience would be like from upper elementary, say 7th, 8th grade, up through discerning adults and everything in between. This was written originally as a newspaper column that I've managed to save and collect over the years, and then took several of these and put them into this collection.
So what sparked you to do that? Was there something in particular that gave you that idea and said, hey, I want to make a book out of these?
Well, actually, my boss did when I was working for the newspaper in a small West Texas town in Texas. My boss came up to me when I retired and told me, he says, most of these are pretty good. You should put them in a book. So I kind of took it to heart, and he gave me full liberty as far as permission to use the works that had appeared in that newspaper. And then, of course, everything is copyrighted by me.
Now, of course, you've been published before in your column, but when it comes to books, is this your first time publishing?
It is.
Once you decided to collect all your articles and put them into this book, was that a long process for you to get this formatted and then put through that publishing process?
It actually was. It turned out to be a little more, I wouldn't say difficult, but more time-consuming than I thought. Over the period of about 10, 12 years, I wrote somewhere on the order of about 240 columns. And so it was a lengthy process to kind of go through those, to pick out which ones I wanted, which one I didn't want. Some of the stories were very local specific to the town I was working in, so I did not include those. So then once I decided which ones I wanted to keep, it was a matter of selecting them into the 3 categories that I mentioned a little earlier. And then went through a process of re-editing everything. And then it was sent to Christian Faith Publishing Company, and they made their suggestions and comments. And so there was another round of editing that went through with that. So the whole process took about a year.
Man, after all that time, that hard work, and being it was your first book, that day came for you, you got the first copy, and you're finally holding it in your hands. Paul, what kind of a moment was that like for you?
Oh, I was thrilled. I was just totally thrilled when I finally got that first copy in my hands. One thing I want to add, I have to thank my siblings a good bit for this, because I ran things by them to get their input on things and their comments and stuff. So I had kind of an inside audience, if you will, during this process to help me formulate it and put it together and categorize it and what have you.
I'm looking at the book right now, and this is a great cover. I love the illustration on the cover, Paul. How did that all come together?
Well, I tease people and say, well, that was me several years ago. But not really. It was actually Christian Faith asked me my input on what I would like for a cover. And I said, well, how about a guy sitting in front of a computer, since everything's computer-based anymore. And I spent a lot of time on the computer. So to me, that was a fitting thing. And I think the artist at Christian Faith nailed it. I love the cover.
Well, this sounds like a book I think a lot of readers are going to be into. Again, it's called Deciphered. It's written by Paul Scifres and published by Christian Faith Publishing, and really it's available everywhere, like at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Paul, thank you again for coming on the show and talking with me all about this. It was really great.
I appreciate the time.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.